Hi yogis, welcome back to another episode of RunYogi Diaries. In this episode, we explore what many consider as possibly woo-woo, the idea that we are not merely our physical bodies, that our well-being has a metaphysical element. In conversation with Dr. Nitin Bhatnagar, who has explored this realm as a physician. If you like the work I do in this channel, please remember to subscribe, hit like, leave your thoughts below, and feel free to share the content if you think it can make a difference with others. Hi, Dr. Nitin Bhatnagar. Welcome to RunYogi Diaries.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So, I have your resume in front of me, which is one of the most fascinating resumes of one person that I know of. So, you are a practicing cardiologist, and what's fascinating about it, there are a lot of cardiologists, but what's fascinating about your resume is that you also have ventured into the metaphysical side. You are a healer of using energy medicine, perception integration, and angelic Reiki. And all of that is Greek and Latin to me, but we'll dig into some of that as to what it is. You studied the worlds of philosophy, psychology, cosmology, metaphysics, healing. You studied functional movement. You're also a CrossFit instructor, and I know you're also a triathlete because that's where we met in one of the triathlete forums. So you call yourself an intuitive cardiologist, which is a fascinating term, a life architect, and a metaphysician. Wow. So obviously, we're all lucky to have someone like you who's kind of integrated all these multiple fascinating disciplines for well-being into one person. So uh, maybe we should do a bit of a flashback. How did it all get started? How does someone who gets into becoming a physician go into all these different domains? So maybe we should do a bit of a flashback.
Sure. So it goes back to when I first decided to do medicine, which was surprisingly around the age of 3. My father's a cardiologist. I grew up in his aura in that regard. And when I was around 2, 3 years old, I would take a roam around with my dad's stethoscope, and I would listen to my friends' hearts when they came over. And then when I was like 5, I would check their blood pressures. And so, the pictures of me that my mom would show, that they're all lying down on bed while I'm going from friend to friend, listening to their hearts and checking their blood pressures. And then as I continued growing up, it just became more and more ingrained that this is what I want to do, as I would go and spend time with my father in the coronary care unit, or go rounding in the hospital seeing patients. It was just something that I loved doing. And I just kept getting exposed to that more and more. And so from that young age, I knew that I wanted to be a physician. And it was actually in med school. Funny enough, is that in med school I thought, oh, I'm going to be a psychiatrist, I'm going to be a dermatologist, and that's where, or I'm going to be a pulmonologist, and those were all different fields depending upon what I was studying for those months. And then, but however, I kept comparing in my mind all those fields to cardiology, is what I always wanted to do, which goes to the backdrop of a funny story where I remember, traveling with my father around the world when he was, giving lectures and for his research and so on, as a cardiologist. And then we were at the dinner, and all the members of the podium, who were famous cardiologists or cardiac surgeons who had come to the talk, and we were all sitting around. And the cardiologist says, "Oh, Nitin, you should be a cardiologist." And the cardiac surgeon next to me says, "No, no, no, you should be a cardiac surgeon." And then I went back and said, "No, I want to be a cardiologist like my dad." So that was the sort of like official entrance in my mind when I was an early age, like 8, 9 ish. Like, nope, this is what I want to do, and I've just pursued that for the entire time. As things progressed, continued to do medical. Finally did all my college, medical school training, got into cardiology, started joined practice, and it wasn't until 10 years later
Mm,
where I decided that I was not happy with the way things were going in
mm,
medicine.
mm,
Um, the way things were being practiced, there's been a whole aspect of the humanity and the sanctity of what
Mhm.
happens in the patient's room, and the connection between a healthcare professional and the patient. That seems to have been lost because the way there's so much of pressure with EMR. You need to get your notes done in time. You've got to get the patients in and out. You've got these number of patients to see, so
Mm.
much of time. Insurances, all these things have started to
Mm.
erode the way medicine is being practiced.
Mm.
And around that same time, I started becoming unhealthy, and I wasn't eating well. I was eating junk food. I wasn't exercising at all. And then I realized I was just not walking my walk. I wasn't talking my talk. I was
Mm.
telling you should exercise, you should eat well. Meantime, I'm going and stuffing my face with a donut. Right.
Now, now
So
you know. Now you know why patients don't take advice, follow advice.
very true. Good point. Good
It's like
point.
you're telling me to do it, but I don't see you doing it.
So as things progressed, I just kept on having this deeper and deeper connection of self change,
Mm.
and I started changing with my own nutrition. First, start off with that. Then I started exercising for the first time.
Mm.
Eventually, I started going to CrossFit for the first time in my life. Of all things, instead of going around the treadmill, I decided to go join a CrossFit gym. And then later on, got better at it. I wanted to learn more about functional movement. Became a CrossFit coach,
Mm.
and then it was interesting is that I saw as myself progressed in nutrition and exercise, my mind started getting clearer. I
Mm.
had more ability to understand greater concepts, seeing the bigger picture. I think it was just getting more mind centered, mind oriented. Then I started doing a lot more meditation, going to
Mm.
retreats, learning how to do meditative practices. Then started studying human behavioral medicine, started studying color medicine, light therapy, energy medicine, angelic Reiki, and then perception integration, bringing all these various things, realizing that there's more to healing than
Mm.
just simply giving out pills and simply saying, well, we don't have any options, this is it. And realizing that there is a role for, let's say, acupuncture, there is a role for herbology, there is a role for other modalities of treatment. And then I started studying ancient cultures. And I
Mm.
started studying ancient cultures and what they practice as medicine, right? So
Mm.
Ayurvedic medicine, ancient Egyptian medicine, ancient Chinese medicine, see what the ancient Greeks did, ancient Romans did. And there was a beautiful connection in all of these, which is the psychology and the physiology go hand in hand.
Mm.
So when your psychology is out of balance, when we're stressed, we're worried, we're constantly either infatuated or we're resenting, we're in pride and shame, and we go into these imbalances. Our body is constantly providing us with wisdom
Mm.
to help us get us back into a center of balance. But we don't listen to that mind body wisdom most of the
Mm.
time. And what happens is that illness forms. And illness is nothing more, in my opinion, as out of balance wellness.
Mm.
So when our mind and body and spirit are all connected as one, we end up having being in a mode of healing. But when we are out of balance, it's not.
So, in your own case, right, in your own discovery of some of these things, how did you stumble upon this? I mean, is this, the like you said, you were, you felt unhealthy, so you took on this journey, right? You started improving your nutrition. You started, so it could have stopped at just improving nutrition and taking some pills because you're a doctor and you're fine now, or maybe do some mild exercise, but it seems like you've moved to to the edge of this whole paradigm. How did you end up getting drawn there?
Because I wanted to learn everything in all aspects, just like I had learned
Hmm.
in medicine. Because when you're in medical school, you've got to learn all the systems, you've got to learn all the biochemistry, the physiology, the pathology,
Hmm.
everything, right? I wanted to try to see if I can try to understand and learn everything that there is to do with alternative medicine as well, and
Hmm.
see what best I can provide to my patients or clients, not
Hmm.
just medicine, or just say, okay, well, there's only this one treatment or this one therapy, or because if I only knew acupuncture, then I would just say, okay, just do acupuncture. But now
Hmm.
I know that there are other modalities, then other natural modalities, other healing modalities. But why not implement everything?
Hmm.
Why limit myself with one thing? Just like in
So,
medicine, we would say just do pills or surgery. At least
hmm.
this gives us more tools, and at least I can always direct somebody to those areas. I don't have to master every single one of those areas. I
Hmm.
can have somebody go to those things, the things that I do not know about.
So did you end up having to try those first yourself, like things like acupressure, for example? And I think maybe it's a good time to talk about that, right?
Yeah,
Because you talk about energy medicine. So what is energy medicine, and can you
yeah.
talk to that a little? What is energy in
So
the context of
so
health?
so if you step back for a second and see the everything in the universe is made up of energy. All right,
Hmm.
we're all constantly vibrating at different frequency. Right, so your frequency is of one sort, my frequency is of one sort, but we're still very similar. Hence, we are both dense. Right, we're in this
Hmm.
form. Okay,
Hmm.
but other aspects, if you start studying cosmogony and you study cosmology, the stars and all vibrate at different frequencies. Planets start at different frequencies, right?
Hmm.
Everything vibrates at a particular frequency, including the Earth, and Earth also has its own pulse. So if everything is
Hmm.
vibrating at a frequency, then that means, and just like if you're if you remember when you're in a pond of water or in a pool, and you even if it's an absolutely still water, and you drop something in, or you're in the water and you just kind of just hit the water, currents form, ripples form,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
those will then intersect with other ripples. So energy is constantly in motion, and it is constantly intersecting. So even though
Hmm.
you're sitting at your office, and I'm sitting here in Massachusetts, our energies are still connected,
Hmm.
not just through electronics, but through energetic fields. So what happens is that from the heart space we have a resonant energy, and that kind of
Hmm.
just radiates outward. Right, many people have talked about you've got not just the physical body, but right beyond us you've got just a few millimeters, few centimeters above, you've got you've got your mental body, then your emotional body, your relationship body, and these keep on going out, then your spiritual body, and that extends out for much
Hmm.
further, which is the reason why somebody can, a loved one or somebody we're really connected to can have an illness or some kind of problem or be in distress or whatever at the other end of the world, yet we
Hmm.
feel it because it's all connecting from their heart space to our heart space. So all heart spaces are connected throughout the world.
Hmm.
But if we let our minds come in the way, it doesn't happen. So going back to energy medicine, it is those who practice the energy medicine and the different versions of energy medicine too, and including that, for that matter, Reiki. It's being, whether it's hands-on Reiki or energetic Reiki,
Hmm.
you are able to then transmit that energy off healing to help
Hmm.
that person go into a energetic field that they can start healing. So I'll give you
Hmm.
the example from I'm an osteopath as well. So the example I will give you is, let's say somebody sprains their ankle. Okay, uh, a week or so later they'll start having a headache, and they'll
Hmm.
go to the doctor and then say, well, I need to get headache medication, or they'll take medication for headaches. But the idea is to figure out what the origin of the problem was, not just treat the solution. Medicine, you can either just keep band-aiding everything,
Hmm.
but looking for the cause, I think, in my opinion, is key.
Hmm.
And you may discover, and at least in osteopathic medicine, for example, we were taught, for example, if you go back and you find and you do research into their history and you talk to them about the details of what happened, you might find that, oh, well, you sprained your ankle. Huh,
Hmm.
interesting. Because what happens is when you sprain, let's say, the right ankle, the right knee gets affected because that's now out of whack. Your then opposite hip gets affected,
Hmm.
your then opposite rib gets affected, opposite shoulder gets affected, opposite neck gets affected, and then you get an opposite headache. So the
Hmm.
person's coming with a headache, but in actuality, the problem was that it started off with a sprain. So
Yeah.
instead of just simply giving headache medication, you put the body into alignment, which is one of the, like osteopathic techniques, right? So chiropractors are also trained in doing body maneuveral therapy, right?
Hmm.
You put the spine back into place, but in osteopathic, you put every part back into place. And when everything is back into alignment, the body now is able to heal itself because the body has a
Hmm.
beautiful ability to heal itself. Same thing with energy medicine, where you allow the body to heal by giving it the right programming and the right frequency to be able to get itself back into alignment. And the different versions of this.
Great. That's
Some
that's.
people do it even with, with crystal healing, right? So
Hmm.
and the times when it doesn't work is because either the frequencies are not matching, or the illness is too severe that those modalities can't do it, because these, remember, you're
Hmm.
working on very subtle energetic fields.
Hmm.
So if even though I have heard plenty of cases where cancer is being healed, or other more debilitating things are being healed with other modalities, and if you think about it, modern medicine is only a few hundred years old. What
Hmm.
about medicine for the last several thousands of years? We've done it, and we've been able to help people. There are plenty of stories of this, in the literature. However, some cases, if things are too severe and the body can't heal itself,
Hmm.
sometimes even pills can't heal it.
Hmm. Hmm. Makes sense. And as a common person who is kind of usually confused about these different options, right? How does one decide one or the other? So I guess I'm guessing that general health, preventive medicine, alternative is a great, go to, because you're not yet there. You're not at a point where you're beyond redemption.
Mhm.
um, but if things are already, in a shape, at a time, at a place where it needs intervention, then it's modern medicine that can do it, right? Is that a
Correct.
fair?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Mhm.
But there are also people who, yes, you do the modern medicine part, but then you also need other healing and other modalities to continue with maintenance of the health of the body, like
Mm,
Ayurvedic medicine, or acupuncture, or whatever the case might be. But you also, so I'll give you the basic great example. So, patient with a history of bypass surgery. All right, they've gone
mm,
through bypass surgery because their cholesterol was wrong, was too high. The diabetes was out of control. Their blood pressure was out of control. They used to smoke. Unfortunately, ended up with blocked arteries. They had to go for surgery. We've got them a whole boatload of medications to quieten things down. Great.
mm,
After surgery, they're getting better. I get them into physical rehab, get them into nutritional training, teach them about meditation. I get them, make sure they've got their sleep stuff in order, make sure they're hydrated. And yes, so we're keeping other parameters in control, like blood pressure, heart rate, and so on, with appropriate medical therapy. We're keeping an eye on their cholesterol, their sugars, all those things. That's great.
mhm,
But then I will also send them to acupuncture and say, do the acupuncture, because remember, when you've had your open heart surgery, everything has just been opened, everything is out of alignment.
mm,
Get that looked at. After that, maybe go to a myofascial person or go to a chiropractor, right?
mm.
And to get the body back into its order so you can start healing.
So
Because
what's a
the
myofascial person?
myofascial is, if you think about there's a whole myofascial layer around the whole body, like a
Mm,
glove. So imagine if you're wearing a glove.
mm,
So if I was wearing a glove right now, and if I pull this aspect of the glove, this thumb moves, right? If you remember
mm,
your glove, a glove anatomy, if you're wearing that and you're pulling one little aspect of this, another aspect of it would move. So
mm,
you're wearing a whole body myofascial glove. And
mm.
if you adjust the myofascia in areas that are tight, you help open up other areas.
Got it.
But getting everything back into center of balance, and then the other thing is your mind. So now my question begs is, why did you become a diabetic? Why did you have high
Mm,
blood pressure? Why are you is your cholesterol high? Right, and in the end, because it's heart disease, you have to ask the question: is where you're not living your life in full inspiration? Because heart disease in my body medicine is considered that you are not living in alignment with your highest purpose and your highest goals. That's why people get into heart disease,
mm,
electrical activities. And your body is essentially, when I have patients who say, oh, I'm having palpitations and so on, and I've already ruled out any lethal or emergent or urgent issues, all right, then eventually when people are having palpitations, it is essentially, and if it's not, let's say, we've looked at your thyroid and we've looked at all your other conditions, we looked at outside the box. Right, we've looked
mhm,
at, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough nutrition? Is your potassium okay? Magnesium okay? Calcium okay? All these things, and they're all okay. Then
mm,
we have to ask the question, all right, so in that case, there's nothing pathologically going on. So, but
mm,
physiologically, your heart is doing exactly what it is meant to do by giving you palpitations for you to, like an alarm clock, for you to wake up and say, all right, what else is going on?
mm.
Because what happens is, typically now you go back to your psychology, and in the psychology, when you're unconscious, will keep on releasing back to you, telling you where things are out of alignment. because
Mm,
remember you're constantly receiving all this bombardment of understanding and stimuli and senses, right, through all your senses, even through your gut senses, even through your immunologic senses. We're
mm,
constantly testing and tasting our environments, but at some point your your conscious field cannot handle all of it. Otherwise,
mm,
you'll literally just shut down. So your unconscious is holding all that stuff, and at some point, either in dreams or when you're more relaxed, all the unconscious says, "Oh, you're relaxed. Okay, now here, process this," and then
mm,
send you that information to process. But if you're not willing to process that information, right, then your physiology takes over. Where's the next step? Your physiology then
mm,
takes over to show you, hey, what's out of alignment. Let me try to get back to that. And finally, maybe some people will go, okay, I have a diabetic problem. I got to figure out what happened. So now you need to
mm,
understand the whole mind and body connection of why diabetes happens, why does high blood pressure happen, or any other
mm.
ailment. And all this has been mapped out. So there are people who have studied mind body medicine for thousands of years, and we see correlation of disease and psychology imbalances. So bring it all back
So,
together.
you know, is it also in a way connected to the whole our nervous system, the way that operates, which is the
Hmm.
parasympathetic and sympathetic? So, if I were to kind of, there's obviously a lot of gold that you're sharing right here. So, just to kind of call out some things here, right? So, what you're saying, if I were to capture it, is that you are taking in constantly a lot of stimuli from the outer world, and if it's not and it's not possible to process all of it consciously at a given time, because you're processing some things that you're conscious about, and you're busy with your life, your work, your kids, your whatever, right? And somewhere, when you're down, when you're taking, maybe sleeping, or when you're relaxing, is when that the remnants of those stimuli that's gone in is now kicking in back, because that needs to get processed, correct?
Right, right, and
And
also
when
your reactions to them.
and the reactions to them, and that kicks off a whole bunch of physiological response, which is where your sympathetic nervous system is coming in, your heart rate goes up, your cortisol is up, and all
Hmm.
of that is without your permission,
Correct.
right?
But if you think about it, it's a natural feedback mechanism to
Natural
get us
feedback
more
mechanism.
aware. So the
Yeah.
sympathetics nervous system will start causing your sugars to rise. Your Let's say,
Hmm.
for example, if you're in a lot of stress mode, right?
Hmm.
You're very pride all the time. You're and you're infatuated and constantly in that go phase.
Hmm.
Your cortisol goes up, your sugars go up, all these hormones that from a cellular level start to rise, and
Hmm.
eventually that uncontrolled will give you some kind of problem, right? Because
Hmm.
those organs will get affected in those areas. And so all organs now, if you look at Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and it's the human body is divided into various charts and various portions, and each part deals with something. Liver deals
Hmm.
with something, and we know it in modern medicine as cleaning out toxification. But it also
Hmm.
it's liver is involved in cleaning out toxic thoughts, right?
Hmm.
So when your liver gets congested or whatnot, it's what are all these thoughts and whatever stresses you're also going through also may hide there. Fears are typically held in kidneys, and the more they
Hmm.
crystallize, the more kidney stones happen, right? So you talk to a modern physician, they're going to go, no, that's rubbish. But you talk to an energy medicine physician, what's like, yep, that's absolutely true.
Hmm.
Because and then you tell the energy person that, oh, this is what modern medicine is, they'll say that's rubbish, because both are seeing it from their own polarized perspective.
Hmm.
The idea is, and that's what I like to do, which is bridge both worlds,
Hmm.
alternative and traditional medicine. And my goal one day is for both sides to actually explore what the other has to offer.
Hmm.
Not saying that
Yeah.
one is right, the other is wrong, but to see what else somebody else has to offer. Because healing is not about just a pill. It's not about simply saying, okay, well, we have to do surgery. When those have to happen, that is. But it's also not just, let's say, acupuncture or massage or myofascial.
Hmm.
It's not just these things. Healing is in the encompassing concept.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think you also talked about, you described how, each of us are in a certain frequency, or in a certain, and that gives us form, right? And
Mhm.
if I go back to my basic physics lessons way back, the theory of relativity, there's a, essentially, what Einstein described as this continuum of energy and matter. So if you're at a certain frequency, your energy; if you're at some other frequency, your matter, right?
Hmm.
We've learned that, but we don't know how to connect that to our lives. That seems like something out there that the physicists have to figure out. But it doesn't connect with our own life. So what I'm taking away from what you're saying, Doc, is if you think of us as nothing but a, a certain energy in a certain form, uh, at a certain frequency, therefore I'm a solid in a certain form, but I'm still energy in a certain frequency. And if I can tap into that, then there is I have the access to heal. That's really what I'm taking away
Correct.
from what you're saying.
Yep. Yep. We all have the ability to heal ourselves.
Hmm.
The body has a natural ability to heal itself. It also goes back to our mindsets that
Hmm.
will prevent us from doing so, because we think that, well, we cannot heal, or we
Hmm.
need outside source. So anytime we feel that we need something from some outside, that will be a source of disempowerment for us.
Hmm.
So for example, if we are not balanced from within, all right, and we don't know how to control, let's say, money, all right, and we're
Hmm.
constantly in our emotions with money, what happens? We're disempowered, and somebody else from outside will control us. Banks, stockbrokers, etc., etc. Somebody else will manage your money for you, right?
Hmm.
If you, let's say, are not you're not empowered mentally, and you don't have command over what you're reading, learning, and expanding and ever growing for yourself, somebody will come and tell you what to believe, as
Hmm.
news and media and government, etc., tell you this is what you need to believe, not this but this, because we don't believe that you are smart enough to go research and learn anything on your own, because
Hmm.
mentally you're disempowered. Physically, you're not empowered physically. Well, here's a pill for you. I joke with my wife sometimes. I said, I should always have Prozac and Rogaine in the medicine cabinet, because if either one works, I don't need the other. All
Hmm.
right. And I'm being funny there, but the fact of the matter is, when when we are needed for medications, right? Then we've disempowered ourselves, because our health was already not good to begin with,
Hmm.
because we were out of balance physically, because now somebody else, pharmacy and the medical community will tell you what to take. Spiritually, if we're not connected spiritually, we're not doing our own our meditative practices, and trying to connect and connect to our own divinity within us, which is available
Hmm.
to us at all times. Well, then somebody else will come at right? The priest at the church or wherever will at the temple or whatever will tell us, no, this is what you need to believe, this is how it is, because you're not. So if you're not empowered from within, you'll be disempowered from without.
Hmm.
So
And
it's basically coming back to balance.
makes a lot of sense. So, in terms of a hierarchy, right? In terms of hierarchy, um, what are your thoughts? Does it start from being spiritual, or does it start from being physical? I mean, where do you start so you can establish a balance in one's life? Where does one start?
Beautiful question. It leads me to what you were saying earlier. So you said, essentially, spirit without matter is formless,
Hmm.
and matter without spirit is motionless. So they
Hmm.
both go hand in hand. They can't be separate or one or the other. And essentially, when I'm listening to a patient's heart, for example, I always feel that I am trying to listen to what the physical body is like. I'm trying to help the car, but in actuality, the
Hmm.
driver is still there inside the car while the car is being looked at, right?
Hmm.
So you're still a spiritual being having a limited physical experience.
Hmm.
So the question is, do you remember your spiritual experience? Do you remember that you are a divine being having a limited experience? Or do you believe that you are only this, a physical form? So it starts either way, but it has to start with somewhere. So if you're
Hmm.
already in this particular form, then you start breaking your own mindsets, understanding the wisdom of the body, seeing what's going on, trying to teach you in terms of how you can get back into alignment. You
Hmm.
break all your mindsets, do the inner work, and finally, what do you finally come down to is your beautiful spiritual self. Now, when you're
Hmm.
connected to that and connected to a beautiful space of gratitude within the heart, and you open up your heart to unconditional love, you connect back to your spiritual side. The gateway eventually always comes back to the heart. You had asked me, why did I want to do the heart? Well, I studied all these different systems in medical school, but in the end, it finally always came down to the heart.
mm,
Whether it was just intuition or not, but it finally comes down to the fact that the heart is essentially running the show from a spiritual perspective, which is through the heart, not the physical heart, even though the physical heart has electromagnetic fields and so on, but it is through the heart space that you end up connecting back to your spirit side.
mm.
And spirit side is nothing to be scared of or anything like that. It is you. It's connecting back to the innermost version of you.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Beautiful.
another example is when I did done sensory deprivation also.
Mm,
And so when
mm,
I got into a sensory deprivation tank, and I couldn't see anything, no hearing, there was no sound, and I was just floating in salt water,
mm,
and there was no movement. You're just lying there, and my thoughts kept on running. Right, first fears came along. When I broke those fears and relaxed, quietened that, the mind had something else to communicate about. Oh, look inside the darkness, look at this, look at that, and I just quietened
mm,
all those things down. And the more and more I just kept on going deeper and deeper, then suddenly the mind shut off, and the mind wasn't doing anything, and I could only hear my heartbeat as loud as I can in the whole chamber. And then I just continued to listen, and then that finally slowly died down. And beyond that was being able to feel your own inner light, because all
mm.
the senses had no longer you're taken off all your clothes, and now you're totally naked, as it were, is the best example. And it was a beautiful experience. And that's one thing that I've done throughout my career, is exploring other things. Like, I don't think there's anything that I have not done from a nutritional standpoint. I've
Mm,
done keto. I have done intermittent fasting. I have done complete fasting for like 12 days, only water. I've
mm,
done and then I've been vegetarian. I have been vegan. I've tried a whole gamut of things in an effort to experience all these things.
mm,
So, and there is no one thing, and that's the thing. That's the beautiful thing, where there is no one modality where one can say, well, only if you're vegan, only then can you attain this, or only if you are fasting can you attain this. I've done them all, and I will tell
mm.
you that you can discover the truth in all of it. I've done CrossFit. I'm a triathlete, training for races, so using the physical body for all this.
Mm.
But in the end, it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
Tried all these healing modalities of myofascial, acupuncture, angelic Reiki, color medicine, energy medicine. Done lots of natural therapies, like supplements and things like that. In the end, it's still no longer one thing. I've also done, when I
Yeah.
was sick, other traditional medicine, and realizing even that
Mm,
was not enough. It had to be
mm.
something else. So you have to be more open to what else is going on, and not say it's only this and not that. And that's how
Yeah.
you come back into center of balance.
Yeah. Beautiful. And just going back to your when you're talking about this sensory deprivation tank experience that you talked about, it almost feels like at the end of the day, where you're coming back is to that. Um, People talk about it from people say consciousness. People talk about it as cosmic consciousness. Maybe there are different words that are used. So is that am I getting that right in terms of what you're saying, that at the end of the day, when you are completely balanced, when you are completely centered, you are finally actually experiencing pure consciousness?
I would say yes. However, if in when you are in that field of the center point, right, the zero point of
Hmm,
all energy, as it were,
hmm,
right,
hmm,
that's a beautiful point of stillness.
hmm,
And in that stillness, there is nothing else there. So you found that center point of all energy, where
hmm,
everything, there's no creation nor destruction, because we know that in our bodies we are
hmm,
constantly creating and destroying. Right, your bone, even as we speak right now, parts of your body are breaking up, parts of your body are building up. Right, whether it's
hmm,
neurons, blood cells, bone cells, it doesn't make a difference. We find the same from a cellular perspective into a cosmic perspective. Simultaneously, as galaxies are being destroyed, galaxies are being created.
Hmm.
Planets are being destroyed, planets are being created. Stars are being exploding, stars are being created. It happens at all scales of existence. However, when you are at the center point, there is complete neutrality.
Hmm.
And some would even say that it is from this point where then when a charge is born, right? Because at that point there's no neutrality. There's only neutrality of charge. There's no charge, right? So at that point, when you start creating a positive and a negative, even at the microscopic level, even at a cellular level, when you create charge, life then starts to flow. Because
Hmm.
now, in order for life to flow, you've got to have charge. You got to have polarity in all scales of existence. Because if there is no charge, then creative doesn't happen. It goes
Hmm.
back to the concept of Shiva and Shakti, where Shiva is stillness and Shakti is the energetic field of all creation. So and the same thing comes back to our human body. When we're in perfect stillness, we find that
Hmm.
center balance. But in that center balance, we're able to also heal. But
Hmm.
from that point, after we've finished meditation, what do? We stand up and we move, or we eat
Hmm.
something. We get our gastric juices flowing. We stretch our legs. We're back into the physical form of movement, of creativity, either eating, so destruction, or and then regenerating something in our body, creation. So the
Yeah.
balance point is helpful because now we can have a much greater and wider picture of what's going on, and being able to see the bigger picture, we're in a state of balance. But yet, if we're staying in one polarity, either positive charge or a negative
Hmm.
charge in our lives, we don't see the other end of it, and we don't see the entire truth. And in my opinion, truth is both sides of any equation. I mean, we've seen plenty of times where we've been in arguments with somebody, and when we hear it from there, we stop enough to be able to listen to them, and we see it from their perspective. We're like, okay, I didn't think of that perspective. I was looking at it
Hmm.
from my perspective, because we'll look at it from perspectives as long as it benefits us,
Yeah.
and not looking at the other way.
Fantastic. So, coming back to that original question in terms of where one starts, and part of why this podcast exists is uh, to bridge the realms of physical and the metaphysical, and that's why I call it Run Yogi, because I think that while we all start running or doing physical work to get fit, but I think from what I'm hearing from you is the ultimate fitness is the ultimate balance.
Mhm.
When you're centered and balanced from all aspects, then you really fit, for a lack of a better word. So it's almost like, coming back to that question, what I'm taking away, which is a lot of gold, is that a great place to start is to take care of your physical fitness. That,
Yes.
so that could be a good first beginning.
Yeah.
Your walks, your runs, going to the gym, get yourself fit,
Get
whatever
out of the
the
couch.
access.
Get off the
Get out
couch.
of the
Get off a
couch. Yeah.
chair. There's a
Yeah.
simple walk. You don't. No one's saying you have to go and do a marathon. No one's saying you have to
Yeah.
go and do all the training. But simply getting off the couch and
Yeah.
start moving is
Yeah.
the greatest way to heal.
Yeah.
I tell patients. I mean, we always remember. I tell them the story of Newton, and I said, you remember his whole phrase of every action has a reaction, right? So we need to act, and then our bodies need to then react.
Hmm.
But I also remind them of the other law, Newton's law, which is bodies in motion stay in motion. And then I quickly tell them that Newton's law is bodies at rest will be laid to rest. So,
Yes.
well, it is very beneficial to keep moving and exercising. And no one's saying do the highest, but do as
Hmm.
much as you can and keep
Hmm.
building on it.
Yeah.
And so what you said was, what can we do is we can start with our own physical health, right? Because
Hmm.
this is exactly what it is, right? What's tangible right now, we begin
Hmm.
with that. Can I
Yeah.
do one squat? So a quick example was,
Mhm.
I had COVID last month and I was in bed for 2 weeks, and my coach would call me and goes, Nitin, can you get up and do one squat? Can you
Hmm.
get up and do one push up? And me, I was doing 100 a day, right? I was,
Hmm.
I was doing tons of physical work right until the point I fell sick. In,
Hmm.
in terms of, I was doing my training every day. I was swimming or biking or running or something, weights or something or the other. And but that too, it was a beautiful experience, because you end up realizing and understanding the whole grace and gratitude of stopping, slowing down, reconveying, reflecting on your life, and figuring out what's going on, and understanding why your body went into that whole shutdown in the first place. And that's another whole podcast, I think. But can I even just do one squat? Can I even just do one push-up? Can I do just one
Mm.
thing? So I got out of bed, no matter how weak I was, and I just did one squat, and I got
Mm.
back into bed. And the following day, I did two squats. Then I got back into bed, just to make my body to move. So that was something that tangible that we can do to begin the healing process, to allow
Mm.
flow in the body, so that and now everything is stagnant. And then as things progress, you start improving your nutrition, you're improving your sleep habits, improving your hydration. Another simple thing one can do: drink a little bit of water and just make
Mm.
sure that you're staying hydrated for the day. We're 60, 70% odd, mainly water from in our cells. We need water. And how
Mm.
many of us don't? And I hear that from patients all the time, which is we, nope, have one glass in the morning and that's it. But I have like 6 cups of coffee. Does that count? No, it doesn't. That dries you out. So, staying hydrated is the one simple habit, one simple shift that we can do in our lives to make that difference. And then it finally compounds.
Mhm.
And then, maybe start a little of a meditation. People ask me, Nitin, how do you start meditation? I say, I don't want you to do more meditation than longer than like anything from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. Because
Mm.
I can guarantee you, your mind cannot hold even 2 seconds of a thought. The moment you start going and closing your eyes, you'll think of, do I have the stove on? Oh, what
Mm.
time do I need to go and take care of this? Oh, do I got to go pick up somebody? And like, oh, this is boring. Your mind will constantly play these things. So even if you can sit still for just a few seconds and practice that for like a month, and then go to 20 seconds, then go to 30 seconds. If you can do 30 seconds, then we try to move on in next month to like a minute, right?
Mm.
And then you just find some quiet space. And then, discovering gratitude. Gratitude is one of the fastest ways to be able to begin your inner work and healing. Gratitude for where you are and where you want to go to, and then to
Mm.
create a direction. Well, as these things progress, suddenly we start discovering, okay, the time honored questions finally start coming out. Who am I? Where am I from? And why am I here?
Mm.
And where am I going? And when you start asking those questions, questions will help you restraight your focus to get you to where you want to go. And that's how we go from the physical back to the spiritual. And most importantly, is ground that spiritual back into the physical.
Yeah.
So that's
And
why, training and all is, at least for me, is actually a very spiritual experience.
mm.
I don't actually get the high. People say, "Oh, you must have the runner's high, or you must love the endorphins or whatnot." Actually,
Yeah.
no. Sometimes I just suffer on the treadmill, or I just suffer on the
Mm.
bike, or whatever. Or I just, okay, what the coach said, you've got to do 3,000 yards today for swim. I'm like, oh god, all right, fine, whatever. But then when I just before I get into the pool, I simply look at the water and I see that this is like I imagine in my mind that this is the material world,
Mm.
right? And I've got my feet into the material world, and the rest of me is not engaged in life yet.
Mm.
And I go, I'm going to jump into this water and I'm going to fully immerse myself into the real world. And I'm
Mm.
not going to live my life on the sidelines. And I get in and I stay fully present. And next thing you know, my 3,000 yards are done. And I'm like,
Mm.
how did that happen? Garmin could be wrong.
And that brings me to another point, which is, so we approached it from the physical to the metaphysical. Now there are a lot of athletes out there who train a lot, and they experience fatigue, injuries. So I'm wondering if there is a approach from the other side for people who are physically very active, but there's probably something else going on that's causing all the injuries and maybe fatigue and some maybe disease sometimes.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had the opportunity to help many athletes from my human behavioral aspect of this as well, not just the cardiology aspect of it.
hmm,
And what I've discovered was to be so when we are sometimes, and this actually has happened to me too. So I've experienced it myself. All right. So I will tell you that from personal experience as well. When we're doing so much of training, we've got, let's say, a race in mind, we've got a goal in mind, and we've got
hmm,
something to achieve. All right. At some point, we get lost in the training. We forget
hmm,
sometimes our whys. Before I agree to do my races, I write down my whys. Why am I doing this? What is it
Mm.
going? And then I keep that, and I have that, and I will refer to that sometimes when I'm really down in the dumps. I'm exhausted, tired. I go back to my why. It's like, why am I doing this? And it was interesting is that when I went to go help at the Ironman at Lake Placid as a volunteer, I remember there was a chap who was running. He was completely deflated as an athlete. He had finished his swim and bike, and he was on his run, and he was completely deflated. And he was just like he was crying while he was on the
Mm.
thing, and he was like, I can't do this anymore. And so I quickly ran up to him, and I just walked with him just for a bit, and I just simply told him, I said, all right, and he told me his name. I told him mine. We introduced ourselves quickly, and I said, what was the why? Why are you here?
Mm.
Do you remember why you decided to train a year ago? What was those whys? And he told me a few. It was
Mm.
his family. It was a cause that he was going for. He wanted to see his own limitations. He wanted to break through his mindsets. I said, and I made him remember all those whys. And we did about 10 whys. And
Mm.
after that, he remembered them. He started, and the tears started flowing, which meant that he was connecting back to his true inner self of why he did this in the first place. He got
Mm.
inspired, and he ran. And I met him at the finish line
Fantastic.
another 2.5 hours later. And he did it. My point being on this is that many a time when we're training, because we have got that on our training workout, and this is what we
Yeah.
need to do for the day, we just push ourselves. There's a fine line between pushing ourselves versus seeing, okay, listening to the wisdom of the body and saying, okay, you know what? I haven't slept enough. I haven't had proper nutrition. I am
Mm.
not recovered and rested from the prior 4 workouts. I have not had a rest day. And then it also comes to our ego sometimes when we get very prideful. And when we're prideful, there's going to be an opposite downfall in order to
Mm.
bring us back into balance. The universe has this beautiful way of doing this. When our psychology is out of balance, as we spoke about, our physiology takes over to remind us where we're
Mm.
out of balance. So let's say the fatigue, the exhaustion, the injury, the pain, the hip,
Mm.
and this and that, everything is showing up as acting up. Okay, telling us, okay, stop, get yourself back into center, and
Mm.
take care of the injuries and so on. But when we don't do that, when that doesn't happen, our sociology comes in. So our friends will say, "Hey, Nitin, you're not looking too good. What's going on? You're getting more
Mm.
fatigued lately. Your parents or your kids or some sociology is going to come back and tell you, and you
Mm.
still don't listen and you still remain adamant. Then the universe comes in and gives you a whop on the back of the head, gives you some kind of major situation where you have to finally like break down and go, okay, universe, I'm listening. What is
Mm.
the lesson do I have to learn? Might be through finances, might be through a relationship, might be through physical illness,
Mm.
might be something to finally get you to realize, okay, something is out of whack. Stop running around, stop being so pig-headed, and get yourself back into balance. And
Mm.
find where your pride was, find where your ego was, find what your fears are, find where your guilts and your shames, back to your inner work. This is where your
Mm.
spirituality comes back in. You
Yeah.
break all these mindsets, you come back into balance, you start discovering that you start healing quicker, and then you start again.
Yeah.
Versus just plowing through, injuring yourself, and now being set back for months or even
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
and then going for surgeries and all these kinds of things. But if
Beautiful.
you but it had to be about listening to the wisdom of the body. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you don't listen, your coach will come and tell you, or your somebody else will come and tell you, right?
Mm.
But many times we are. Remember, I told you the whole thing about the whole. If you're disempowered within,
Mm.
somebody else will empower overpower you, right?
Mhm.
So many times we've heard of these great Olympic athletes who did not make it to the big right. I mean, they
Mm.
were doing very well, and then the last minute they faltered. Then they had to give up the Olympics or whatever the case was. Right? Many a time it's because their whole life all they've been doing is doing their activities, their sport for the sake of a parent or the sake of a coach.
Mm.
Because they never got the true adoration from them, the true love from them. So they did this hoping that they would get that.
Yeah.
Right? But again, an imbalanced polarity.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they
It's,
discovered how to love themselves at the time and realized and discover the true love of the sport. So my biggest why I started this whole swim, bike, and run in triathlon was because I wanted to actually learn how to swim properly. I could doggy paddle well, but I wanted to be able to have endurance to be able to go up and down the pool, which I'd never been able to do in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I learned how to do that. I did not know to use how to all the gears on my bike, and I was too scared to going on roads. I was too scared to go uphill. I was too scared to go fast downhill. Maybe a little bit still more, but anyway, my and same thing for running. I want to be able to
Yeah.
run without pain.
Mm.
And what happened? I was able to come into a great group of people who taught me how to, and then I got coaches and teachers who taught me how to swim. Very close friends who took me on my first bike ride at 5 in the morning out on the road, and we did lots of hills that day. And they
Mm.
taught me gears, right? So, and for that I am grateful. But that's one of my whys, is because I wanted to
Yeah.
properly learn how to swim, bike, and run. And I wanted to learn how to do proper nutrition. I wanted to do proper anything that hurts. I wanted to be able to stretch it. I want to get my core in order. I wanted to make sure that not only nothing hurts, but things are well coordinated and flexible and not always tight. Hamstrings
Mm.
are always tight, quads are tight. So I said, this is a great opportunity for me to go into triathlons where I need to learn all this stuff
Mm.
and be able to also take care of all these other things as I'm going along. The
Wonderful.
one sport to take care of all my needs.
Yes. No, that's wonderful. And what I heard in what you said, one key element that you said is that, as you're training, there's a lot of feedback that's coming to you from the environment, from your own body, from your own intuition, instinct, but also from outside. And if you're listening to it, and because a lot of times this word "listen to your body" is used very loosely, and I don't think anybody gets it. But I think you elaborated it beautifully. Just to make it really real, which is to say that there are signals coming from multiple sources, within and without, and that's what it means. That listening to your body means that in how it's used colloquially, and you have a choice to listen to it and take action and continue to balance the journey of balancing, like you've been talking about. Ultimately it's coming back, creating that balance, and moving forward. And
Right.
that's very wonderfully elaborated, of something that is usually loosely used in our world, every now and then.
Right.
And we are all kind of, what does that mean? Listening to my body doesn't speak to me.
And that's the thing, it is constantly connecting to you. Like, even for
Yeah.
example, a simple thing as you eat a particular food, all right,
Hmm.
and then that day you become very gassy, or you have to have a second bowel movement. There's something
Hmm.
feedback telling you that something that in that food is some spice, some excess of salt, some sugar, something processed, something or the other doesn't agree with your gut biome. And there's a great deal of wisdom in your gut.
Hmm.
Just to digress for a second, right? We've got different brains. We've got the brain, right? We've got the gut brain, which is our gut biome. We've got the heart brain, but we also have an immunology brain, which is
Hmm.
our immune system. It's a brain entirely in itself, and it's got sensors through bacteria and through viruses. Remember, we've also got good bacteria and viruses inside us,
Hmm.
trying to maintain that homeostatic balance with the bacteria and viruses on the outside.
Hmm.
All right. So when that disequilibrium happens, right, we're not hydrated enough, we're not sleeping enough, we're overworked, or we're stressed out, we're getting angry, our emotions, our physical health it drops. Those other outside viruses that are waiting to come in will come in, and then we get
Hmm.
sick. And what happens? We have to stop and lie down in bed, right?
Yeah.
We complete shutdown until our bodies restore all those balances back up again, and then we can proceed. So we are constantly getting this feedback internally, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes on the bike, like, I did that like hour and a half on the bike, and like my right hip, my quad is just burning up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, that means more than likely that wasn't stretched out correctly. There's
Hmm.
something else heating up, or maybe you look at the opposite side,
Hmm.
which is not tight enough, or too loose, or something, or not strong enough, and that's why this side opposite is now taking over too much of a burden.
Right.
So I've got to now look at the opposite side as well, you know, and then that's that data coming in. There's also data on your little bike computer or on your Garmin. My VO max changed. I was doing really well. I could, let's say, do a certain mileage in a certain time frame. And suddenly now it's taking me longer to do that same mileage. What happened? Even if it was the same elevation, what happened? Well, did you rest enough night before? Did you get enough nutrition? Like, there is always a feedback,
Yeah.
but we have to get in touch with trying to understand those pieces of data that are coming at us, whether it's through our phones. I mean, we spend a lot of time on our phones, right? We spend a lot of time on our phones, on social media and trying to connect to people, emails and texts and so on. But are we spending enough time to understand the data that's already coming in through us?
Terrific. So that's a phenomenal conversation, Dr. Nitin. I think this is such a abstract area, but at least it's viewed as an abstract area. But in conversing with you, I think I definitely, and I'm sure the people who are listening to this can connect that this is not so abstract as we think it is. It's not out there. It's right here. It's impacting you on a day-to-day basis. So it's not something to be taken as some somebody out, some philosopher monk out there can figure out this. I'm going to lead my life working 24 hours a day or whatever, right? So thanks for that. Thanks for connecting the dots. Kind of coming to an end of our conversation. Is there anything else? Any last final message that you want to give our audience before we wrap up?
Just simply try to understand that we're all spiritual beings having a limited human experience, and, and none of us are perfect in human form. And to have the grace and gratitude to be able to explore what somebody else is either saying, viewing, and doing without judgment and prejudice. Now, that's easy for me to just throw that out there. However, trying to work on this thing on a daily basis is not the easiest thing, and this will probably be one of the hardest lessons that any of us will ever learn. It was certainly for me, and it's about daily practice in doing this. And there are ways you can do this, not only just through meditation, but through and in gratitude journaling and trying to connect with somebody who knows this stuff and is able to help. But in the grand scheme of things, we're here for discovering who we are. And once we discover who we are, then we are able to then go help somebody else. Just like when you're in an airplane, what the instructions, if the oxygen comes down, right? First, put it on yourself, and then or use the life vest. You put it on yourself first, then somebody helps somebody else. Because if you can't help yourself, you can't help anybody else. And the greater you're able to find your own inner light, you're able to shine that on your own path. And we don't have to compare ourselves to anybody else. Everybody else is on their own journey. And each of us are simply having a beautiful experience and just enjoy that experience, because we don't know when that one day is going to be where that experience is done.
Yeah. Well, that's a conversation for another podcast. But for today, I'll let you go, Doc. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, and I'll
Thank
let
you.
you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I will share, the links to your blog, your website, on the show notes. So if somebody wants to reach out to you and talk to you further on this, well, they can reach out. So thanks a lot, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
You too, my friend. Be well.